Hey everyone, Flo from Off to Lens here, and today we're talking about lenses, vintage ones versus modern ones. Over the past few years I have shared videos using both my vintage Contax Zeiss and the much newer Meike Cine lenses, and I always get asked which one I prefer or how do they compare, so I thought I would make this video to answer a few questions. I will talk about why I have the two, their differences and similarities, and which one I would recommend based on my experience. I know that both these lenses are very popular when it comes to getting a prime set, so hopefully this video can help you in choosing which one to go with. Before I start, don't forget to subscribe to see more videos like this one, and let's jump into it. So why do I have both sets? Contax Zeiss. This is something that I already talked on the channel before, but the main reason for me to get the Contax Zeiss back in 2019 was that I always wanted a set of high quality primes. As you know, I shoot a lot with zoom lenses, especially for documentary and travel work, but shooting with primes is such a different experience and it forces me to think more about composition. When you start looking into vintage glass, you will end up with a list of choice that is most of the time made of three names: Leica, Contax Zeiss, and Canon FD. I already had some Canon FDs when I used my Pocket 4K and I love them, but when I switched to the BMPCC 6K and after doing a bit of research, that is when I started to look to get some Contax Zeiss. I still wanted vintage lenses but with higher build quality and a slightly less vintage look to be used on a wide variety of projects. It took me about 5 months to complete my current set. Since then I have shot documentaries and personal content with them. What I like about the Contax Zeiss is that it provides the best of both stills and cinema lenses. They are compact and light like modern stills lenses, but have a long focus throw, all metal build, and a beautiful image like cinema lenses. Feel free to watch my full review of the set. Meike Cine lenses. Now with the Meikes the story is a bit different. I originally bought the 25mm MFT version 3 years ago and I really love the image, as well as having a proper modern cinema lens. Fast forward a year and Meike reached out to me asking me if I wanted to test out their new Super 35 line of cinema lenses. Since I love the MFT version, of course I said yes. And for the past couple of years I have been using those lenses regularly and I absolutely love their look. Again, feel free to watch my individual reviews of the Meike lenses. And as always, all the gear mentioned in this video will be in the description as well. Now let me briefly show you the sets that I have for both. Contax. My kit consists of 4 lenses. I chose these 4 focal lengths in order to be able to pretty much cover a whole project on them. I have the 18mm f4, which is my widest and perfect for cities, landscape or establishing shots. Then the 28mm 2.8, which is the first one that I got and the one that I use the most. You can pretty much shoot anything with this focal length: people, city, outdoor, and I even put it on a gimbal. I have said it before, but this is probably my favorite lens to use. Then I have the 50mm 1.4 and the 95mm 2.8. They are all MM, which stands for multi-mode, and when you start researching into the Zeiss, it seems that they are slightly better than the AE ones and don't feature the ninja style bokeh. In the future I might add a 21mm or 35mm, but for now I'm happy with these 4. The Meike Cine lenses. With the Meikes I only have 3 so far. I first got a 35mm, which I love, and then a few months later the 50mm, and then more recently the 25mm, which is probably my favorite out of the 3 just because I love this focal length so much. There is also a 75mm, but I haven't had my hands on it yet. The 3 that I have are all T2.1. There will be more focal length available, and this is due to the fact that they are currently still being released. I've used these lenses for documentary, travel and personal content. First of all, they both have a beautiful image. Of course the look is different from one another, but both lenses have something special and I absolutely love the image regardless of the subject that I'm filming. Well made. Both the Contax and the Meikes are very well made. They feel solid and have a certain weight to them. Their focus ring is smooth and allows for precise focusing. Similar in size. Both lenses are similar in size within their sets, especially the Meikes, which makes things like changing filters or using a matte box easier. Price. Price is also very similar. Of course the Meikes have set prices and the Contax being vintage lenses can vary a lot. That being said, most of my Contax Zeiss were bought at around 500 USD on average, and the Meikes are currently sold for 600 USD. Now let's talk about the differences. Vintage versus modern. The obvious one is that the Contax are vintage glass and the Meikes are modern. Most of my Contax kit are from the 80s and 90s, but they started making those lenses in the 70s. Whereas the MEIKE S35s are from 2020 and are still being released. Stills versus cine lenses. The second biggest difference is that the Contax Zeiss are stills lenses and the MEIKEs are Cine ones. This means that in order to use the Contax as Cine lenses, they need to either be fully modded, like my 18, or you need to add mount adapters, gearings, step-up rings, etc. in order to properly use them as Cine lenses. The MEIKEs, on the other hand, are proper cinema lenses. You have markings on the side, the aperture is measured in t-stop, the aperture is also declicked, and you have a longer focus throw. As I said before, they come in sets of the same size, so you get the same filter size, t-stop, etc. Super 35 versus full frame. Another important difference is that the MEIKEs are made for Super 35 sensors, whereas the Contax Zeiss can actually cover full frame. Weight and size. The weight and size is also quite different between the two. The MEIKEs are significantly bigger and heavier, which is understandable being cinema lenses. To give you an idea, the Contax are about 3 times lighter and half the size. Next is availability. Since they don't make the Contax Zeiss anymore and that they can be quite popular these days, it can be hard to find them. The MEIKEs are new lenses, so this should mean that they are pretty easy to buy depending on stock, of course. And lastly, with vintage glass, you run the risk of having a bad copy. You can have some imperfections either on the body or on the actual glass, fungus and dust can be an issue, and this is why it is very important to check first or to be able to return. For example, I had to return 2 of my Contax despite being advertised as mint condition. Also, as you can see on a documentary that I shot with the Contax lenses, there can be a lot of chromatic aberration. Here's a quick shot of my YouTube talking head setup with the 2 lenses. Even though they can be quite similar, I still use them equally. To give you an idea, I prefer to use the Contax Zeiss for personal content or when the project needs to have the slight vintage look. And I prefer to use the MEIKEs as my main cine kit when I want to use primes. I will also say that both lenses are great to use as a solo shooter. Both the Contax Zeiss and the MEIKEs are beautiful lenses, and depending on which one you end up getting, you will not be disappointed. The question you need to ask yourself is, do I want vintage or modern lenses? If you are looking for vintage glass, then the Contax Zeiss are amazing and I would say go for it. They still have that slight vintage look and feel, while still retaining a neutral image that can be used on a wide variety of shoots. The Canon FDs are also a great entry point as well and are worth considering. They are more affordable than the Zeiss, easier to find, and the image they can produce is great. I would say go for them if you want a vintage look more than anything, or if this is your first try at vintage lenses. Just remember that with any vintage glass you will need to modify them in order to use them as cinema lenses. Now if you need a set of modern cinema glass and own a Super 35 sensor camera, then the MEIKEs are very hard to beat. The image is beautiful, they're great to use, and the price is quite competitive for such a high quality prime cinema lens. Lastly, if what you need is purely a set of prime lenses, then it will be down to look, usability, as well as availability. As I said, I love both lenses and I still use them both. However, I would be more inclined to recommend the MEIKEs for cameras like the BMPCC 6K because I love filming with them, as they feel like proper cinema glass, they work very well as a set, and the image is beautiful. As always, it is about your needs and the kind of projects you film, and in this case, the way that you film as well. Of course, these are my own thoughts, and you might think differently. That's it for me for today, guys. Hope you've enjoyed this video and that it was helpful to you. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments which lens you would get or which one do you already have. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Also, feel free to check out my new ebook, Freelance Documentary Filmmaking, an Introduction, where you can find a streamlined but comprehensive overview from pre-production all the way to marketing, built on years of my own experience shooting short documentaries around the world.